Good evening, brothers and sisters. This is SDA Truthbringer, and I'm here with another prophecy update. As you can see, I have a couple articles I'd like to share with you. But first, I want to read a passage of scripture from Luke chapter 21, verse 28. Luke chapter 21 and verse 28. It says, "And when these things begin to come to pass, then look up and lift up your heads, for your redemption draweth nigh." Amen. What is Jesus Christ saying in this passage? He is saying that, in this chapter, he gave a rundown of what's going to happen and the signs of his coming and what's going to happen before he comes. He says, when all these signs, with all these events, begin to come to pass, don't get scared, don't get frightened, don't get worried. But what does he say? He says, but look up, lift up your head, for your redemption draweth nigh. And brothers and sisters, we're going to see that we are at the doors of the National Sunday Law. We are at the doors where everything is being set. All these stages are being put into motion where the world is going to quickly ask for the National Sunday Law. And it's going to come. The first article I would like to share with you is from gmtoday.com. It says, retailers observe day of rest. Religious convictions not for sale. Now, if we can go down in the article, it says, despite our hyper-commercialized world, there are some thriving retailers bucking the trend to remain open no matter the day or time, specifically Sunday. And then it continues going on. It says, of course, the principal entrepreneurs who do rest from the daily grind desire to be successful, but they also seek balance for themselves and their employees. Taking a breather speaks to the limits in life and the religious concept of the Sabbath, despite immense cultural and economic pressures to work constantly. Here they're talking about the Sunday Sabbath, not the actual biblical Sabbath. Now, if we can continue, it says right here. It says, Sundays are a day of worship and rest, just the way it was intended to be, said Harry Schaff, who owns a confectionery with his wife Mary. So you see, brothers and sisters, he's saying that Sundays are a day of worship and rest just as it was intended to be. Is that true? Biblically, it's not. The day that is supposed to be for rest is the seventh day, not the first day. But here we see people now are starting to keep Sunday holy. They are starting to rest on the Sunday, just as the Pope is asking them to do. And they are saying that it is intended that we should rest on the Sunday. The people are setting themselves up for the National Sunday Law. Now, let's move on to the next article. The next article, excuse the ads. I tried to take them off, but I didn't know how to. But this article is from Bolsky.com. It says, why is Sunday the day off from work and not any other day? It says, Sunday is the best day that we all look forward to. It's the day one does not wish to get out of bed until they really are hungry. Having Wi-Fi, coffee, being in pajamas, lazing around is the best way most of us like to spend our Sundays. But let's move more down in the article. And this article explains why Sunday is a day of rest. Right here. It says, so we bring to you the answer to this question as to why an off on Sunday is important. It says, the Britishers were the first ones to start the holiday system in India, which initiated during the year 1843. This was done because the Britishers believed that the Lord Jesus created this world in just 6 days and took rest on a Sunday. Now, is that biblical? Jesus, God did create the world in 6 days, and he did rest on the seventh day, and he made the seventh day holy as a Sabbath. He did not make the first day holy. Sunday is not holy. Sunday has nothing to do with the Sabbath whatsoever. But it continues the article. It is said that it is also the day on which people would generally take rest from other worldly duties and was known as the Sabbath day. This practice continues even till date in all places where the Britishers ruled, including India. So, what we could do is Google the British Empire, because this is talking about India right now. And it says that this practice, this keeping of Sunday holy, continues even till date in all places where the Britishers rule, including India. So, if you go on Google Images, type in the British Empire, look how massive that empire was. Every country that it ruled, if we could hold this to water, it would say that all those countries are keeping Sunday holy. Brothers and sisters, we see that Sunday is being pushed, that people are now keeping Sunday holy, and they are recommending that others keep it holy as well. It's only a matter of time before the National Sunday Law gets passed, brothers and sisters. Now, I want to move on to another topic that I'd like to share with you. This is from thecatholic.com about Seventh-day Adventists. Okay, Seventh-day Adventism. Now, I want us to scroll down. This is very important, and I wanted to just share this with you guys. It says, right here, this is like on the Catholic website, brothers and sisters. Listen to what it says. It says, Seventh-day Adventism cannot change its views on the Catholic Church being the whore of Babylon without admitting that it was wrong on Sunday worship. It cannot admit that Sunday worship is not the mark of the beast without changing its views on the Jewish Sabbath. It's not Jewish, it's the Sabbath in general, but for the context of this, we'll leave it alone. It says, Seventh-day Adventism cannot cease to be anti-Catholic without ceasing to be Seventh-day Adventism. Do you understand what's going on here, brothers and sisters? We see that the General Conference of the Seventh-day Adventists are in apostasy. We see that the General Conference is reaching across the abyss and clasping hands with Catholicism and with Pope Francis. We see that the General Conference was silent when Pope Francis came to the United States of America to speak to Congress. We see that Seventh-day Adventism was silent when we asked a priest from the Vatican to open the 1990 General Conference session and to have the Catholic flag pass by on the General Conference session in 1994. We see that Seventh-day Adventism, the main line, Seventh-day Adventism, is an apostasy. We see that those who are trying to stay true to the Bible and the spirit of prophecy, the faith that was once delivered to the saints, they are being outcast and pushed away from the mainline Seventh-day Adventist Church. And here, from the Catholic website, it says that the Seventh-day Adventist Church cannot cease to be anti-Catholic without ceasing to be Seventh-day Adventist. So what does that tell you about the General Conference? And what does that tell you about those who continue to follow what the General Conference is doing? I'm Seventh-day Adventist, but I don't agree with what the General Conference is doing. We cannot wait for the General Conference to tell us when to get ready, when to prepare for the National Sunday Law, because they are not going to tell us. If we are going to wait for the General Conference to tell us when to get ready, we are going to be waiting for a long time, and we are going to be waiting in vain. We must prepare ourselves for what's going to happen. We cannot wait for them. And it says, again, Seventh-day Adventism cannot cease to be anti-Catholic without ceasing to be Seventh-day Adventist. Let us meditate on what that paragraph is saying and question what's going on. Now, let us move to this next article that I would like to share with you. It says from CNN, right here, CNN Tech. It says, Donald Trump wants to close up the internet. And we see before that the internet was handed over to the UN, to NATO, to the UN on November 4th. And we know that the UN is headed by the papacy. So right now the papacy is beginning to control the internet. He's going to start controlling what goes in, what comes out, what we can post, what we cannot post, what we can look up, and what we cannot look up. And here we see Donald Trump. He's saying that he wants to close up the internet. Now, let's scroll down. It says Donald Trump has called for a shutdown of the internet in certain areas to stop the spread of terror. We know what terrorism he's talking about. Fundamentalists, people who are radical, as the Pope Francis says. Now, let's continue to go down I wanted to get to exactly what he says. It's probably passed it already. Let me see. Oh, yeah, right here. I'm sorry, I passed it. He says in a speech... Oh, I just passed the whole thing. It was the first paragraph. Sorry. He says, in a speech on the USS Yorktown in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina on Monday, Trump referenced the use of ISIS of social media as a recruitment tool. So now, remember, they have the agenda to shut down the internet, to shut down what we can post, what we cannot post. He's trying to shut down those who are preaching the 300 messages and those who are anti-Catholic, who is calling the Pope Francis as the Antichrist. That's the whole goal. Now they're going to create a thesis, a problem, that will lead people into agreeing with their goal to shutting down the internet. But they're going to create a problem that they created. They create a problem to achieve their goal. And this is what's going on. They are saying that they're trying to shut down the internet because of ISIS. But we know that behind closed doors, the ones who created ISIS, who created all those people, are the same ones who are trying to fight against them. So they create the problem, and they allow the problem to escalate so they can create a synthesis, a solution, and then they push the solution on the people, and they allow them to choose, but they continue the force of the problem until they have no choice but to accept the solution that they are handing to us. Now, it says, he recommended a discussion with Bill Gates to shut off parts of the internet. He continues and said, we're losing a lot of people because of the internet, Trump said. We have to go see Bill Gates and a lot of different people that really understand what's happening. We have to talk to them about maybe in certain areas closing the internet up in some way. Somebody will say, oh, freedom of speech, freedom of speech. These are foolish people. We have a lot of foolish people. And then right the next section, some totalitarian governments do it. What are totalitarian governments? China, North Korea, etc. He laughs. He says those are foolish people, those who say freedom of speech. Why is he laughing? Well, in the last prophecy update I shared with you, I read an article that says that the Republicans are trying to change the Constitution. So if they succeed in changing the Constitution, they're going to attack the First Amendment, which says freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of religion. If they attack that amendment, all those goes away. So they can do what they want to do. Brothers and sisters, you see what's going on. They are pushing the agenda of closing down the internet to keep out fundamentalists. And it's going to happen pretty soon. Pretty soon we won't be able to look up the stuff that we usually do on the internet. Nothing like that. They're not going to allow us to do it. They're going to shut it down. And Donald Trump here is saying it. He goes, we need to do it. Now, he's not the only one. We can continue in the next article. This article is from NBC News. It says, where do we draw the line when it comes to free speech online? It continues. It says, while the internet has never been a utopia devoid of trolls, some experts say fake news, hate speech, and terrorist propaganda are turning it into a digital cesspool. You know where you know that those who preach the 300 message will fall under? Fake news, hate speech, and terrorist propaganda. So they're attacking them smokescreen. That's their doing. That's their goal. Continue on the next paragraph. It says, in a country that prides itself on its First Amendment, that leaves social media companies with the delicate task of sorting out what's free speech and deciding on what they won't tolerate on their platforms. It says last month, members of the Global Network Initiative, including Facebook, Google, and LinkedIn, I apologize if I said that wrong, said they shouldn't be pressured by governments to change their terms on some service or restricted content. But with the rise in fake news and digital terrorism, some experts say it is time for more action. Excuse me. It says free speech is the mantra people repeat over and over to justify all sorts of terrible things they say. Jen Goldbach, a professor at the University of Maryland's College of Information Studies, told NBC News. A lot of it is straight-up harassment designed to upset the person who is on the other end. You see what's going on here? They create the problem, and then they push the solution, and they are allowing the people to follow into the solution by continuously adding more to the problem. They say that they want to control the internet, so how are they doing this? Oh, harassment. We cannot allow harassment, those who are attacking people, those who are spreading fake news, hate speech, terrorist ideas, terrorist propaganda. And then they say the solution is we must shut down the internet. Oh no, but we have free speech. Well, what defines free speech? And then the Republicans say, oh, they want to change the Constitution. See what's going on? The problem is just going to keep on going more and more and more until something drastic is going to happen. And this is not the only thing. Even Pope Francis is talking about fake news. It says Pope Francis calls spreading fake news a sin. I'm sorry. Okay. And we can have an idea of what specific fake news he's talking about. If we call the papacy the Antichrist, if we call Pope Francis the man of sin, if we preach the 3 angels messages, if we call out the Lord of Horn power and the characteristics of the Lord of Horn power and how he thinks to change times and laws, all that will fall under fake news. And Pope Francis says that if we are saying these things, we are committing sin. Now, let's continue moving on. It says, Pope Francis, who in the past has not shied away from offering his opinion on U.S. politics, said in an interview published Wednesday that spreading disinformation is probably the biggest damage that the media can do and called it sinful. Pope Francis compared the spreading of fake news to the desire to eat excrement. You see how far he's going to say that if we are calling him this, calling all this preaching the 300 messages, he calls it's like eating excrement. Let's continue. He says, I think the media has to be very clear, very transparent, and not fall into, no offense intended, the sickness of coprophobia, that is always wanting to cover scandals, covering nasty things, even if they are true, he said, according to the report. And since people have a tendency toward the sickness of coprophobia, a lot of damage can be done. Now, he says, major websites like Facebook has vowed to crack down on fake news sites, but there is a debate on what exactly qualifies as fake news, and that will be proven in a later date of what they say is fake news. But nevertheless, the article still stands that Pope Francis is backing all this up in regards to taking over the internet, stopping the spread of terrorism, the preaching of fake news. He's behind all this. He's behind all this, brothers and sisters. This is who's behind everything, the man of sin. Now, let's move on to... Actually, let me close this one. Let me jump to this one first. I want to jump to this one first. Even the Adventist news online is talking about fake news. It says fake news you can't trust. Now, let's move down. It says right here, Adventists are not immune to this trend. What trend? Fake news. The spreading of fake news. It says, like many other individuals working at the General Conference headquarters, I too have received my share of disturbing assertions masquerading as news. Whether establishing a straight line between an Adventist leader to the Pontiff of Rome. Pause. How is that fake news when we see the General Conference spreading its hands across the Gulf to clasp hands with the Pope of Rome? That's not fake news. That's actual, truly news of what's going on and what's actually happening. Or insinuating grave theological or ethical missteps in the church departments and institutions. Pause. That is also false. Because I showed before, and I showed it before on the Omega of Apostasy, where we have published a book called Questions on Doctrine, and in that book we say that Jesus Christ has come in the nature of Adam before the fall instead of after the fall, like the Bible says. We are preaching that the salvation ended at the cross, and there's no such thing as an investigative judgment, no such thing as a sanctuary in heaven. We have strayed far from the faith that was once delivered to the saints. And now there's a situation going on with woman ordination, and transgenderism and homosexuality that is going on in the General Conference area. So to say that all that stuff is going on, and then for this person to say that that is fake news, that is error. And continue. It says, some Adventists decry in their Facebook postings, tweets, or blogs the end of the world, or at a minimum, the end of probation. Pause, brothers and sisters. Did you understand what this person is saying? He's saying that it is fake news for those of us who go on Facebook, to go on Twitter, or to go on any blog and to say that the end of the world is coming, to say that the National Sunday Law is coming, to say that the end of probation is coming. What are they saying? Shh, shh, shh. Go back to sleep. Why? What does the Bible say? What did we read before in Matthew chapter 24 with the 10 virgins? The 10 virgins have fallen asleep. The church is asleep. But 5 were prepared. 5 had the oil. The 5 had the character of Jesus Christ already in them. They gained victory over sin. But what happened at the midnight cry? It says, behold, the bridegroom is coming. All 10 woke up. We through the study, we read that the midnight cry represents the National Sunday Law. At the National Sunday Law, the Adventist Church is going to wake up. But only 5 will be ready. 5 will not be ready. And we only have until the National Sunday Law to get ready. But what are they saying? Shh, shh, shh. Go back to sleep. Don't worry about that. You still have more time. The National Sunday Law is not coming. Jesus Christ is not coming yet. Brothers and sisters, this is fake news. This is error. Don't believe what's coming out of the General Conference anymore. We cannot believe what's coming out of the General Conference. They are not going to prepare us to gain victory over sin. They're not going to prepare us to stand when the investigative judgment passes from the dead to the living at the National Sunday Law. They are not going to prepare us to have a character just like Jesus Christ. This is error, brothers and sisters. But I wanted to share this with you because the Adventist Church, the mainline Seventh-day Adventist Church, is also, as I said before, in apostasy. And even though some people may not like me saying that the Seventh-day Adventist Church is in apostasy, but the Seventh-day Adventist Church is in apostasy. But this is still God's church. Testimony to Ministers, page 45, declares that despite the fact that we have wheat and tares growing, this is still God's church. Now, the last article I would like to share with you is this, from the San Diego Union Tribune. It says Catholic leaders, climate change on same level as abortion and death penalty. Well, brothers and sisters, we know that Pope Francis did in his climate change encyclical. When he speaks of climate change, he's talking about the Sunday law. So here this is saying that Sunday law is on the same level as abortion and the death penalty. Let's continue. Excuse me. It says right here, this is what I want to read, this paragraph. It says many faith groups are taking action on climate change, but the Catholic Church is the largest faith group in America and the only one with a singular leader who has global leadership status. Let's jump down. It says the Pope has nearly unrivaled potential to convince humanity to lean in on climate change. The National Sunday Law is coming, brothers and sisters. Pope Francis has the absolute authority to make the whole humanity lean in on climate change. It is going to happen. And what does Luke chapter 21, verse 28 say again? It says that when these things begin to come to pass, then look up and lift up your heads, for your redemption draweth nigh. Brothers and sisters, our redemption is drawing nigh. This is the end of this video. Stay tuned for more. SDA Truthbringer, out. Okay.